Jake had just moved into his first house. It was a fixer-upper, but he liked the challenge. The place had been empty for years, and there was a lot of work to do, but it felt like home. The only thing that bothered him was the basement. It was dark, damp, and had a strange smell. The previous owners had sealed it up, saying it was unsafe. But Jake, being the curious type, decided to check it out. He broke the seal and went down the creaky stairs. The air was thick, and the smell was worse than he imagined. As he explored the space, he noticed something strange. There were scratch marks on the walls, deep and jagged, as if someone or something had been clawing at them. That night, as Jake lay in bed, he started hearing things. At first, it was just faint noises like a door creaking or the wind whistling. But then he heard whispers, soft at first but growing louder. They were coming from the basement. The next day, Jake went down to investigate again, but everything was quiet. Still, the feeling of unease lingered. That night, the whispers returned, louder and clearer. "Let me out. Let me out." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just the house settling, but the whispers didn't stop. They only got worse. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed a flashlight and stormed down to the basement, determined to find the source. The whispers grew louder as he descended the stairs. "Let me out, please." Jake searched every corner, but there was nothing there, just the cold, damp walls. Frustrated, he turned to leave, but as he reached the stairs, something grabbed his ankle. He fell, and as he hit the ground, the whispers turned into screams. "Let me out." Jake scrambled to his feet, but the basement door slammed shut, trapping him inside. He banged on the door, screaming for help, but no one heard him. The whispers were all around him now, deafening, and then Jake pounded on the basement door, his hands raw and bloody. The whispers grew louder, surrounding him, suffocating him. He could barely breathe, the air thick with fear. "Let me out, please." The voice was right in his ear now, and he could feel cold breath on his neck. Jake turned around slowly, dread filling his chest. There, in the corner of the basement, stood a figure, barely visible in the darkness. Its face was twisted and inhuman, eyes glowing with a hatred that chilled Jake to the bone. Before he could react, the figure lunged at him, and everything went black. When Jake's friends found the house a week later, the basement was sealed shut, just as it had been before. They never found Jake, and no one ever dared to break the seal again. But at night, if you stand close enough to the basement door, you can still hear the whispers. I never imagined that something terrifying could happen to me. I lived a quiet, ordinary life, and nothing unusual ever crossed my path. That's why I enjoyed watching scary stories on YouTube. They gave me chills, but I never believed they could be real. One night, everything changed. It was around 3 a.m., and I was the only one awake in the house. My parents and younger sister were asleep, and the house was silent, except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. We'd been getting heavy rainstorms every week, and this night was no different. I loved listening to the rain, but the wind always made me uneasy. It would howl, and then suddenly go quiet, almost like it was playing tricks. As I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone, the power went out suddenly. The room was plunged into darkness, and I could only hear the wind howling outside. I wasn't too bothered, my phone still had battery life, so I kept browsing the internet. After a while, my eyes grew heavy, and I decided it was time to sleep. I turned off my phone, placed it on my nightstand, and closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep quickly because the next thing I knew, I was waking up with a dry throat. I felt so thirsty that I couldn't ignore it. Grabbing my phone, I turned on the flashlight and headed to the kitchen to get some water. As I opened my bedroom door, I felt a rush of cold air hit my face. The house was freezing, and it made me shiver. I quickly put on a sweater and continued to the kitchen. The wind outside was getting louder, and the temperature seemed to drop even more as I walked. When I reached the kitchen, I noticed something strange. The door to the backyard was wide open. My heart started pounding. How could the door be open? I tried to stay calm and convinced myself that maybe my dad had left it open by mistake. I walked over to the door, looked over my shoulder nervously, and closed it, locking it securely. I hurried back to my room, still feeling uneasy. Once inside, I placed the glass of water on my nightstand and kept the flashlight on, too scared to turn it off. I tried to sleep, but something didn't feel right. My mind kept replaying the open door. Was someone in the house? I couldn't shake the feeling. I got up again and pushed my desk chair against the door to block it. Then, I checked the closet, just to be sure. Finding nothing, I finally lay back down in bed, still clutching my flashlight. Just when I thought I might be able to sleep, I heard a soft thump under my bed. My heart skipped a beat. I had forgotten to check under my bed. I felt sick to my stomach, but I knew I had to look. Slowly, I leaned over the side of my bed and pointed the flashlight underneath. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, under my bed, was a woman. She was incredibly thin, with pale skin, bloodshot eyes, and a smile that stretched unnaturally across her face. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity, then let out a cackling laugh that echoed in my head. Pure terror took over, and I bolted out of my bed, pushing the chair aside as I ran for the door. I sprinted down the hall to my parents' room, banging on the door and yelling for my dad. He came out, holding a gun I didn't even know he owned. We rushed back to my room, but the woman was gone. We only saw a flash of white disappearing out the window. We didn't call the police. We had no evidence, no idea who she was, and no way to prove what had happened. All I know is that she was there, under my bed, watching me sleep. The next day we installed extra locks on all the doors and windows, but the memory of that night still haunts me. Even in a safe neighborhood, you never know what could happen. Always stay alert, because sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happen. When I was 15, I had my first girlfriend, Emma. We lived in a quiet, upper-class neighborhood where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. Emma lived just 2 blocks away from me, so I often walked to her house at night, especially when I had nothing else to do. One Thursday evening, during a school break, I decided to visit Emma. It was late, but I didn't have a curfew, so I didn't worry about the time. As I walked down the silent streets, I began to hear strange noises around me, mostly from behind. The first sound was like a rustling bush. I glanced back quickly without stopping, but I didn't see anything. Feeling uneasy, I picked up my pace, hoping to shake off the feeling of being watched. A few moments later, I heard another noise, a twig snapping underfoot. This time I stopped and turned around, my heart pounding, but all I saw was the empty street lined with bushes separating the sidewalk from people's properties. There was no one there, just an unsettling stillness. I started walking faster, almost jogging now, as I neared Emma's house, but then I heard it again this time. It was unmistakable, the sound of light, quick footsteps following me. I spun around, but the street was empty. Feeling a surge of panic, I called Emma. She picked up right away, and I told her about the strange noises I kept hearing. As I reached her driveway, I saw her looking out of her bedroom window. She waved at me, and I waved back. But then, her voice on the phone suddenly became tense as she asked, "Who's that guy behind you?" I froze and slowly turned around. My blood ran cold as I saw a grown man, crouched low, walking just a few feet behind me. I screamed and bolted for the front door, pounding on it frantically. The man lunged at me, trying to grab me, but then he let go and ran off into the night. Emma's mom opened the door, her face pale with shock. She quickly pulled me inside, locking the door behind me. Emma came running downstairs, and I collapsed into her arms, my heart still racing. Emma's mom hugged me tightly and called the police to report the incident. They let me stay over that night, and the next morning, Emma's mom drove me home. From that day on, I was always on edge during my walks to Emma's house, never feeling quite as safe as I once did.